The islands of the Eastern Caribbean among the most beautiful in the world. The English-speaking countries of Antigua and Barbuda, St. Kitts and Nevis, Dominica, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Grenada are like precious pearls along the Caribbean chain. Although each country has its unique characteristics, this group of small island developing states shares many similarities, including limited size, growing populations, and vulnerable economies and climatic systems. Amongst the most significant challenges faced by the OECS is that of obtaining secure, affordable, and sustainable energy sources to fuel its sustained development and growth. In recent years, as leaders press forward a vision of economic diversification and aim to achieve a stronger relative financial and political position on the global scale of regions and nations, securing a sustainable energy future has become a priority. At present, OECS countries are almost totally dependent on imported energy. And as the frightening reality of limited oil supplies, increasing costs, and political instability in the Middle East becomes increasingly inescapable, the sub-region takes the initiative to move forward with a new approach. The OECS, as part of CARICOM, aims through a collaborative effort supported by policy and legislation at the national level to support the development of a synchronized regional approach to the development and promotion of sustainable energy. On the broader level, the CARICOM Secretariat is in the process of finalizing a regional energy policy which responds to the specific needs, resources, capabilities, and developmental priorities of member states. The process is being overseen by the Energy Program, which presses forward with some urgency towards reform.
The challenges that we face in the region, the Caribbean region, and specifically CARICOM as it relates to energy, is that we lack security generally.
In the words of Honorable Carlisle Powell, Minister Communications, Public Utilities, Public Works, Posts, Physical Planning, Natural Resources and Environment, within the Nevis Island Administration, the only thing we can do to combat the high price of oil on the world market and the escalating price of energy on the domestic market is for us to get very involved in renewable energy. There is some degree of appreciation within CARICOM that central to responding effectively to the developmental challenges the region faces is the need to protect our environment from further destruction resulting from climate change. The mounting evidence linking the use of fossil fuels to the negative impacts of climate change, such as increased intensity and frequency of extreme weather events, sea level rises, and increased temperatures, could also spell disaster for these islands, which are mainly dependent on tourism, agriculture, and fishing, and the most vulnerable to the expected impacts of climate change.
The Caribbean region, as you know, is very prone to natural disasters, hurricanes, floods. Last year, for example, here in St. Lucia, we know what happened with Thomas, the floods in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the floods in Dominica earlier this year. There was almost an ecological disaster. And once we have these natural disasters and the impact on the financial outlay for the countries, very, very severe.
Fossil fuels, such as oil, gasoline, and diesel, are used as fuel for transportation, electricity generation, cooking, and the running of industries. The purchase of these fossil fuels comes at a considerable cost to the islands and results in a significant loss of foreign exchange. Some OECS member states have the benefit of subsidized oil on a soft loan basis from Venezuela under the Petro-Carib arrangement, but there is a desire across CARICOM to take control of the energy production process by harnessing our own renewable energy resources within the region. The Caribbean region can exploit energy from a number of sources, including solar, wind, geothermal, and hydropower. Investigations are ongoing to identify the most suitable renewable energy source for each country, which in turn depends on natural potential, cost, level of acceptance, and the existing policy framework. There is no immediate plan to abandon fossil fuels. This will not be possible, but governments hope to secure landmass sustainability and economic viability by diversifying fuel sources. The proposed regional energy policy aims to achieve collaboration amongst member states for oil exploration and harnessing of renewable energy resources for regional productivity.
They have to explore ways of diversifying their energy matrix to buffer them against those kind of vulnerabilities derived from the volatility in oil prices. And this really means that they have to develop their own energy resources.
As electricity prices in the OECS are amongst the highest in the world, this affects the competitive edge of the local industries and raises the cost of living. Dependence on imported energy has meant that St. Lucia, for example, spends a significant portion of its GDP on imports. Furthermore, the country spends more money on imports of fossil fuels than it receives from exports. This contributes to a trade deficit which impacts negatively on the country's growth. This means that less money is available for local investment and operations in the country.
In 2010, because of the rise in the world market prices for fuel, the importation of gasoline and diesel in particular increased by 38.4% in the year 2010. And that largely reflects the fact that the world market prices increased significantly in that year. In fact, when you break down the figures even further, the volume of importation in terms of gallons was only 2.9% in 2010. However, as I indicated, the dollar value increased by 38.4%. Obviously, with the pass-through mechanism which is in place, and because the Lucilec depends on imported diesel for the generation of its power plants, all of those increased costs will be passed on to the consumer and to businesses. So the higher the cost of fuel, the greater the impact on businesses.
Increases in the cost of energy will also result in increases in the cost of food, transportation, and many other goods and services. The major service export product in the sub-region, tourism, may become uncompetitive if energy prices remain unchanged. The Caribbean Hotel Energy Efficiency Action Project, CHENACT, has conducted a number of energy audits within the hotel sector in St. Lucia, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Grenada, and Antigua and Barbuda, and found that energy bills form the larger part of the costs of operation for hotels. Hoteliers attest to this reality.
And we are in a competitive, global situation, and our energy costs are just killing us at the moment. So we really have to do something about it. Unfortunately, in Grenada, we do have a monopoly with our energy supplier, which is Grenlec. And until the monopoly can be broken, I'm afraid that the energy costs will not go down. Everything must be done, I believe, by every government to try and break the monopoly so that we can have a competitive environment to produce energy.
In fact, governments are proactively striving to strike the right balance between the opening of the power production market and the maintenance of reliable electricity supplies offered by the existing utility companies. The electric utility companies have by and large accepted the urgency of the call for energy sector reform and are formulating plans in response.
At this point, we have just over 50 customers with a total of 300 kilowatts of essentially PV solar, interconnected to the grid. So we can happily say that we have 1% of our peak demand essentially supplied with renewable energy from a number of customers in Grenada.
In some OECS territories, including St. Vincent and the Grenadines and Antigua and Barbuda, the electric utility companies are government-owned, and therefore structural changes consistent with governmental priorities are easier to achieve. Even before Cabinet approval of the St. Kitts Nevis Energy Policy and Action Plan, the utility provider on Nevis entered into a 20-year contract with an independent power producer for the provision of wind energy. The wind farm grid connection was established in 2010 and has since been providing a maximum capacity of 2.2 megawatts or 20% of the island's electricity needs.
It has caused us to be able to spend less in terms of fuel. We have been able to save up to 250,000 gallons of fuel by using wind.
On St. Kitts, the sole utility provider, recently privatized, remains 100% government-owned, and consistent with the approach in Nevis, there is a high degree of enthusiasm for wind energy development there. The electricity company is in negotiations with North Star Company for the construction of a wind farm on St. Kitts. Possibilities for wind energy development in the sub-region exist beyond the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. The northeast trade winds provide a favorable environment for wind development in the OECS. The best wind sites can be found on the east coast and on the northern and southern tips of the islands. Many islands are developing plans for wind energy exploitation, and some have already begun taking wind measurements in preparation for execution of these plans.
One of our sites, the site at Crab Peninsula, actually, we already have a year's worth of data on that. But we have some other areas that we're just waiting to collect the balance of that data. In fact, Crabs and at another area in Antigua called Freetown, we actually have a year's worth of data. We just installed one maybe around 4 months ago at a high point called Macnishmal. But we only have around only around 4 months worth of data on that. And so we have to wait until a year's have passed and then do that.
Wind farms require substantial areas of land, and in some territories of the OECS, attempts to construct wind farms have been inhibited by the difficulty involved in securing appropriate sites.
None of the Caribbean islands so far have used this resource as yet. We are working together with Lucille here in St. Lucia since a couple of years in order to establish a wind farm. So far it could not be realized because of the difficulty to get the land necessary for a wind farm. The land issue, we subestimated this over a long time, and when it came to concrete actions to acquire a piece of land for wind, it turned out that this is a major problem.
An alternative to large-scale wind power development is the installation of turbines on buildings. In Antigua, where government is conducting measurements on 4 possible sites for the construction of wind farms, the Development Control Authority has advised that provisions be made to facilitate the development of small-scale energy projects.
We need to have a system where homeowners are allowed to generate their own power using both solar and wind energy.
An even more abundant and reliable energy resource available within the OECS is derived from the sun. The OECS islands are well positioned to take full advantage of solar energy. The islands receive an almost constant supply of surface solar radiation throughout the year, and this, in addition to fairly high temperature, which averages near 28 degrees centigrade, provides an excellent environment for the use of energy from the sun for heating, cooling, and electricity generation. Solar water heating, in particular, holds much scope for use in both the domestic and hotel sectors, and in some territories, incentives are in place to encourage the procurement of such systems. Although the initial cost of solar water heating systems is significant, the reduction in electricity costs resulting from their use for households that would otherwise use electric heaters is usually substantial.
Maintenance on a solar system is very minimal. There are not many moving parts, especially if you go with the passive solar system, which is a tank, normally a 50-gallon tank with a panel where you have circulation between the panel and tank through a thermosiphon system, where as hot water heats up, it will go from the panel into the tank. Those are the simplest system. If you get into an active solar system, then you get into circulating pumps and PV panels. It's a bit more expensive, but it is still a lot cheaper than going electrical.
In Antigua, where solar water heaters are fairly well established, further market penetration is needed.
We're not seeing anywhere near the penetration in the market compared to Barbados. We're only about maybe 20%, and so we have a long way to go. And in order to achieve those higher levels of penetration, we're going to need to find ways to reduce the cost of the install cost of solar water heaters in Antigua and Barbuda.
The government has signaled its intention to promote, amongst other forms of renewable energy, solar energy as a means of safeguarding the environment, ensuring a more sustainable use of energy, and also addressing the affordability of energy for the citizens and residents. In Antigua and Barbuda, a national energy plan is expected to include incentives for greater solar energy penetration. In St. Vincent and the Grenadines, where Cabinet has approved an energy policy and action plan, the government has begun connecting solar systems on its buildings for demonstrative purposes.
That's supposed to be a 10 kilowatt solar voltaic connection. The aim in that project is to, one, we're going to have a panel, a display panel, where we're going to showcase the contribution from solar versus fossil fuel, and I think that will be a good opportunity to reach the public of the significance and the importance of solar connected panels.
In Nevis, government regulations have made solar water heaters more attractive to homeowners.
We have just recently eased the customs duties on solar energy units, so that for solar panels, for hot water heating, we have taken off those duties. And so that has been a very welcomed relief for those persons who want to go solar water.
The government of St. Kitts and Nevis, in an effort to demonstrate to citizens resident on the island that solar energy is a viable alternative to fossil fuels, is to install a demonstration solar unit on government headquarters soon.
It is not going to be sufficient to run the entire building, but it is a demonstration which we believe will go a long way to provide confidence to the citizens that this is a real option going forward.
Photovoltaic systems, which also derive energy from the sun, are gradually growing in popularity despite their initial high cost, particularly in islands such as Grenada and St. Lucia. The National Trust building on the Pigeon Island landmark in St. Lucia is home to one of the most outstanding solar photovoltaic units on the island. National Trust authorities report that in the process of reducing their carbon footprint, They're saving money as well.
It was installed and commissioned in March of 2009. Since that time, we have generated some 20,000 kilowatt hours, a savings on our electricity bill of about $15,000 since that time. It was donated to us through a joint initiative with the Sustainable Development and Environmental Education and the European EU funds. It works very well, it's low maintenance, and it's part of the St. Lucia National Trust's initiative to try and reduce the carbon footprint of our operations to zero.
Governments within all OECS territories are expected to put regulations in place to promote the development of solar energy. In the modern context of available water resources, significant hydropower facilities in the OECS lie largely in St. Vincent and Dominica. In St. Vincent, hydropower plants began the process of rural electrification and development in the 1950s and 1960s. The systems have served the country well, and plans are now in place at the St. Vincent Electricity Services Limited to rehabilitate and extend their existing hydropower capacity.
We are taking the first step in looking at the rehabilitation of the two existing hydro plants. That rehabilitation will do a couple of things. One, it will ensure that those plants will continue to provide power to our network for another 50 to 60 years. Because in one of the plants specifically, the level of output has fallen over the years. The second benefit that we'll get out of those hydro plants is that we will be able to have an increased output, because we'll now be using turbines that are much more efficient than the turbines, of course, that were bought 50 years ago.
In Dominica, where 3 hydro plants generate 33% of the peak electricity demand of 17 megawatts, authorities are considering harnessing more of the resource. Like most other renewable energy technology, the initial investment costs for the construction of hydropower plants is high, but the production costs are low.
Hydro, the initial cost, the capital cost is rather high as compared to a unit of diesel, but downstream, as it's very low maintenance, and we don't use fossil fuel to operate the hydro. So with these two dynamics, it puts us at an advantage to have hydro. Just a pity that we don't have more, but it also cushions the effect of the high price of fossil fuel.
At the St. Vincent Electricity Services Company, officials attest to the fact that hydropower resources reduce the cost of energy generation, leading to savings that can then be passed on to the customer.
We are lucky in some respects compared to some islands in that we have hydroelectricity generation. And at this moment we are averaging 80-90% of our total energy generated comes from our hydro plants. So in a sense that has been able to cushion the costs to our customers.
Hydropower resources are less productive during the dry season, leading to a greater demand for conventional power sources where alternative renewable energy resources are not available. A major limitation of hydropower, like wind, therefore, is the inconsistency of supply. The system must be backed up by another power source at all times.
In terms of sustainability, I must say that the geothermal seems to me to be the greatest potential for Dominica, not only to have sustainable energy but also be energy independent. The dream of the country is to be able not only to be energy independent, but actually to be exporting energy to our neighbors from the geothermal fields that are here. And I think it is something that is technically achievable, and we're hoping that the price when it comes on will be at such a price that it would also, reduce significantly the cost of electricity here in Dominica.
The plan in Dominica is to sell geothermal energy to the French departments of Martinique and Guadeloupe. Not only for Dominica, but for many territories of the OECS, geothermal energy is a viable alternative for electricity generation, owing to the volcanic nature of a number of the islands. It has the potential to transform the energy sector of the region. On Nevis, where geothermal energy is to be explored and harnessed within the foreseeable future, there now exists a real possibility that the island may be powered 100% by renewable energy.
The World Bank did in fact look at a study interconnecting the Caribbean, where they looked at energy from Nevis being sold to as far as Puerto Rico and onwards to Santo Domingo and Haiti, the Virgin Islands and so on. So we're eager, we're anxious, we're moving forward, and we're not going to stop until we can get this geothermal energy developed in Nevis to complement the wind farm that we have.
In St. Lucia, preliminary tests have shown that geothermal energy exists in the area of Soufrière volcano. As far back as 1979, the government of St. Lucia and a company from Trinidad conducted some exploratory testing on the potential of geothermal energy in the Soufrière Sulphur Springs area and found the wells to be unproductive, but testing did not stop there.
A few years ago, a company from Oklahoma City, financed by UNESCO, did a second exploration on trying to again harness the steam, transform it into electricity. So what you're seeing is a well that was dug about 9,000 meters down. They reached it so deep, they even hit the hot rocks. So when they did the pipe water, steam, the volume from that well was about 900 pounds per square inch. A few bars, I don't know exactly. They were saying that amount they could have piped it, make it drive turbines to generate 5 megawatts of electricity. So that well was very productive. But the impermeability of the rocks and the lack of finance, the project was stopped.
In St. Vincent and the Grenadines, government has invited investors to conduct preliminary tests for geothermal energy. And in Grenada, where electrical engineers call geothermal energy the real game changer, a plan is being devised for the provision of the resource for national consumption purposes only.
Geothermal provides continuous supply. I mean, it's firm capacity while the others are intermittent capacity. So we are looking really at developing at least 20 megawatts of geothermal by 2016. That will really make a big difference in our renewable energy capacity.
Grenada, which is almost 100% reliant on fossil fuels for electricity generation, uses approximately 750,000 barrels of refined petroleum products, or 4 barrels of oil equivalent per capita on an annual basis. The Grenada Electricity Services Limited has stated its commitment to establishing a system where 35% of its energy is supplied by renewable energy resources, with incremental targets being set for achievement. The company hopes that 10% of peak demand will be supplied by renewable energy by 2014 and 20% by 2016. Harnessing renewable energy resources will provide a number of benefits to our territories, including provision of insulation from volatile oil price fluctuations, provision of energy security and reliability, provision of opportunities for investment, employment, and technological advances, reduction in electricity costs, reduction in foreign reserves spent on fuel imports, increased competitiveness of economic sectors, and reductions in pollution and greenhouse gas emissions. The successful transformation of the energy sector in the OECS will require public commitment to the process. Governments have resolved to implement policy initiatives with legislative support to create an enabling environment for the positive reform of the energy sector. The next step is for the public, including income-generating and domestic sectors, to embrace opportunities for change. In the immediate, the people of the member states of the OECS should begin by conserving energy and using it more efficiently. The imperative lies in the need to sustain our environment and our economies.
Energy conservation must be the focus of the whole region. We save energy, we save money, and let's make a commitment to save the environment. We must use energy better, stop depleting the ozone layer, and if we take care of Mother Nature, she will care for us in the future. Think efficiency as we move with urgency towards renewable energy. Renewable energy. Think efficiency as we move with urgency towards renewable energy. Renewable energy. Renewable energy must be top priority. Let's think first of all geothermal, wind and sun energy. Hydroelectricity will save the environment, create new forms of employment. Energy more secure, we can look to a better future. Think efficiency as we move with urgency towards renewable energy. Renewable energy. Think efficiency as we move with urgency towards renewable energy. Renewable energy.
What are you doing? Why you put off all my things?
You have the charger plugged in, no phone. You have the computer on, it's still on the same page from yesterday. Radio on and you're not even listening. Water wasting. You know it requires electricity for the water to flow through the tap. If you're not using it, turn it off and unplug the cable from the switch. You opened the fridge and didn't close it properly. You wasting electricity that your parents have to pay for.
Oh, that's why my parents always complaining about the electricity bill. I remember that. And I think I'll tell my parents the fridge is too close to the stove. I remember my teacher spoke to us about that.